Batman Caped Crusader is a new series that'll be on Prime Video this Thursday, August 1st, and I got a chance to see the first season a bit early, so I'm going to talk to you guys about it. This is going to be a spoiler-free review of Season 1 though, so don't worry, I won't give any details away. Without further ado, let's get into it. This takes place in the early days of Batman, think year 1, year 2, where he's still learning the ropes and trying to be the vigilante that he eventually becomes. And it also means that nobody really trusts him yet as the Batman. He is considered obviously a criminal and a vigilante and escaping from the law every single time they try to nab him. And as more criminals are rising on the horizon to take over the city and corrupt it even more, Batman has to spring into action and hopefully get something done in the process. This is the second project you may have heard of in recent times that chronicles the early days of Bruce Wayne as Batman. The Batman from Matt Reeves did a very similar thing in terms of, looking back on how he eventually became who he is. And in fact, this show is executive produced by Matt Reeves and J.J. Abrams actually. And it's created by Bruce Timm, who most people know as the creator of Batman the Animated Series in the 90s, one of the great animated shows of all time with an outstanding Kevin Conroy performance as the Batman. And so naturally, that's something that's got a lot of buzz around it. A lot of people want to see how this is going to follow up on that. Actually, one thing about this show out the gate, which is so good, is that it follows that style a lot. It does feel like a throwback to that period of time, but the animated series. It does feel like there are certain cues that are taken from there in order to make it as fulfilling an experience as possible. Even when it comes to some of the animation and when it comes to the dialogue and how action sequences are constructed. It doesn't try to just, recreate that no, of course not. But there is a similar tone and similar kind of vibe to them, which is what makes it feel like a very fun throwback to that time. And in that, the show does succeed in spades. I think Bruce Timm and co have done a really, really good job of crafting this version of Gotham and also reimagining it in ways that make it its own version, like something that's unique from everything else. In this sense, you get a lot of different stuff, even with characters who have been established before in the lore. There are different origin stories. Really, everybody gets a year 1 situation over here. Everybody from characters like Catwoman to Harley Quinn to Harvey Dent, everyone is sort of being introduced right now. And so you're learning about all of them as events are proceeding. And I think it makes for some really interesting storytelling. It also in the process makes some big swings that it doesn't try to hold back from, especially when it comes to some of those character reimaginings. The biggest of which is not something that's been marketed, so I'm not going to say too much about that. But it's very early on in the season. There is a character change that they made, which is quite drastically different, and I'm curious to see what audiences are going to have to say about that. And what I also really like about the show is that it does the characterization of Bruce Wayne and Batman really nicely. Because this is early days and this is a point of time when Batman is still not being fully accepted among the people, and because Bruce Wayne is sort of still getting into being the Batman, those two personas are still having a hard time separating from one another. And so there are times where Bruce Wayne is having a conversation and it feels like you're talking to Batman. And it feels like those two don't really, set themselves apart. And in that sense, I think the show does a really good job of developing that character, and Hamish Linklater does a really good job in terms of the voice performance. He honors Kevin Conroy's version in the original animated series from way back when, and he manages to do a really good job of also making it his own in the process. And I think it's a very respectable performance, and I think he does a really good job as both Bruce Wayne and Batman, and manages to make a lot of emotion sell, or lack thereof, because again, he's not being so open yet. He has trouble sort of talking to people about certain things. He keeps things repressed. There are some scenes where he'll flash back to events in his childhood, but he will be asked about it in person in real life, in like modern day, and he'll be like, nah, I don't want to talk about that, try to deflect it with something and move on. And that's again something that the show does explore quite nicely, especially when it comes to his relationship with Alfred. And I really like the dynamic as it was explored over here. The action is a lot of fun. There's some really great sequences, some great hand-to-hand stuff. Very much again similar in line to the animated series in that sense. In that sense, Bruce Timm did a great job of making it like this spiritual follow-up to that, and trying to make it something that is also new in the process. I think there's some really, really great stuff done over there. I don't want to go too much into spoilers because I don't want to give too many details. I don't want to ruin the show for you in any way. But the stories that it is telling, especially with year one versions of these characters, are all really interesting. And they all make mistakes along the way. You can see the learning steps that they're taking in order to eventually become the version of the character that you'll know them as. You're not going to get the best versions of all of these characters, especially when it comes to the Hall of Villains that it's playing around with. They're all building along the way. There's still steps to go and a long way to get there. So right now you're still seeing them make mistakes and make decisions that don't always gel. And I find that interesting. It made for compelling storytelling. Like, there are situations where you think, oh, Batman, he's gonna be able to do, this just fine. He's got this in the bag. But at the same time, he will sometimes make mistakes. He won't arrive somewhere maybe on time. He'll fumble up something. He might, miss a detail here and there. And it makes it even more tense as a result of that. Like, this is not still the world's greatest detective level of Batman yet. As for issues, sometimes the narrative structure of the season can be a little wonky. There are times where things are introduced especially that do feel like they're not really honed in on at that very specific moment in time. And then eventually when you get to them, it's been a while since you were there. It almost feels like a forgotten detail every now and then. Like very early on, there's something that's introduced and someone introduced as like, hey, this is a problem. This could get really, really bad if we don't look into this. And then we go a while before getting back to that. And eventually when we get there, it doesn't feel like it sort of had a presence throughout that's gradually built. It does feel like this one episode happened and then, 4 episodes later, it was like, oh, by the way, remember that detail? Right, we need to get back to that. It's like, yeah, but the way you set that up, it should have had an impact on every single thing going forward. But anyway, it does have a few rough edges at the start of the season while it's sort of finding its footing, which almost feels self-referential to even the Batman at that point of time because he's also trying to find his footing when it comes to certain things. So it can feel, almost in line with that. But it does take a while to, really get itself properly lined up and then eventually it's off to the races. And after that, it's a blast all the way to the end. And so overall, despite a couple of issues like that, I really enjoyed Batman Caped Crusader. I think it's a really good start. I think it's a really good first season, and I highly recommend checking it out. I am very curious to hear what Batman fans are going to think about it. I like the new things that they're playing around with. I like the new ideas. I love the characterization, great animation and action, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what season 2 brings. I'm going to give Batman Caped Crusader an A-. Guys, thank you very much for watching. This is going to be a busy week. I have a lot to talk about, so don't worry. I'll be getting back to you with a lot more stuff very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. Thank you so much once again. And thank you to everyone who's here, who's new. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for your support. Hope to not let you guys down. Hope everybody has a really, really good day. And as always, hope you guys enjoy the show.